Well, the Middle East conflict has caused serious volatility on commodity and equity markets, highlighting the need for investors to diversify assets. Well, earlier today, Ed Boyd caught up with Chris Andrews, Chief Executive of La Trobe Financial.
It is extraordinary, and the human toll obviously is considerable. Once the fog of war descends, anything could happen from here. And folks who tell you they know what's going to happen from here aren't being truthful with you. So that's the first point. For investors, I'd say, though, yeah, you look at oil prices, you look at potential volatility markets, second-order events. How do investors respond to that? It's a reminder, if you need another one after the last 5 years, but it is a reminder for investors that you need to have a really diversified portfolio and you need to have strong exposures to really good quality defensive assets, assets that have performed through periods of turmoil in the past, where investors can really get a sense that they've got a really solid ballast in their portfolio to ride through a storm.
Yeah, obviously the storm's still going, but I mean, how confident are your investors feeling right now in a time like this?
Yeah, we tend to, see a lot of interest from investors at times when markets are volatile, when there's geopolitical, volatility. It's a consistent theme. If we're thinking about our investor base, they tend to be folks approaching retirement or who are in retirement. What they're worried about most of all is a return of their capital, or at least as much as a return on their capital. So we're seeing really good volumes coming into the business, and for us, that's a bit of a sign of where investors' moods and thoughts are at the moment.
So over the last 5 years, as those storm clouds have been around, have you noticed more investors taking an interest in private credit?
So private credit now has a really strong track record. Certainly you've got to be careful where you're selecting your manager and what part of the asset class you're investing in. But we've seen now over a 30-year period private credit really outperforming alternatives through periods of market volatility. So there's no doubt investors are taking notice of that.
Yeah, I saw some modelling from the Reserve Bank. 2024 was the strongest year for issuance in Australia for securitisation. Just talk about why that's becoming such an important asset for people to invest in.
So there's a similar thematic playing out there, Ed. Institutional investors are looking at RMBS notes and they're seeing Australia as a really strong, solid location. When the rest of the world is experiencing volatility, we've got a diversified market, we've got a really strong, stable political and legal system, and that makes Aussie RMBS really attractive for those international investors.
And just talk us through the latest on the La Trobe listed credit fund. How's it going?
We're super excited about that, Ed. It's been a wonderful period for La Trobe. So our first listed product will be going live on the ASX on the 27th of June. So just 2 weeks away as we record this. It's been a wonderful period of time. We were told 5 or 6 weeks ago that perhaps given all of the volatility, we should wait until later in the year. But we spoke to our investors and they said, we want to get involved and we want to get involved quickly. So as it turns out, the fundraise was oversubscribed. So certainly, at some point we'll be back in markets giving more investors an opportunity to invest. But we're looking forward to going live on the 27th of June.
And what sort of investors have you been attracting for this?
Very much those sort of pre-retirement, post-retirement investors who are looking for reliable sources of income. They love the private credit exposures. They love the fact that they get exposure through the La Trobe Private Credit Fund to Australian real estate private credit on the one hand, leavened with some US mid-market corporate credit on the other. So there's a natural sort of hedge and a natural diversification in that portfolio that's really resonating well.
And the outlook for that fund, just talk us through the next 12 months.
So we think the Australian real estate private credit, to start there, Ed, is in a wonderful position now. We've seen sort of the market absorb the really high interest rate, the rapid increase in interest rates over the last sort of 4 years. That's been absorbed. Borrowers are performing really, really strongly. So we're seeing that as a terrific part of the economy over the next 5 years or so. And US mid-market corporate credit is being driven by what we think is a generational investment thematic. Both sides of politics in the US, whether you're a red state, make America great again voter, or whether you're a Democrat, you are absolutely focused on the rebuild of the US middle market. And that is a trend we think for Australian investors. That's part of the world economy that they should absolutely be exposed to over the next 5 years.
Chris Andrews, Chief Executive of La Trobe Financial. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ed.